Well, it's getting to be that time of the update again when everybody's completed the campaign and acquired the rewards. So, I want to take a second look at the Tier 8 Premium Italian cruiser Michelangelo, because I've seen some hot takes around the community on this ship that I think are not right. Mainly that the ship is not good, and apparently that comes down to two characteristics. Number one, it cannot fire forward with its main battery. Even at this angle, we can only get one of the turrets on target. It's only when we get over there that we can get both. So that's a lot of broadside to show to enemy ships in order to fire at them with your main battery gun, which makes you a little bit more vulnerable. Plus, it's got overmatchable bow and stern plating, as if that's the only part of the armor scheme. But that's one complaint about the ship. Actually, that's both of them put together. It comes down to the turret placement and the armor scheme for some people. Well, I'm here to tell you it's true that Michelangelo is a very unusual ship. It's got its secondaries in the place where the main battery should be, and then the main battery is hidden behind the front tower and behind the rear tower around the funnel, actually. So, very strange design for a ship, no doubt. You do have to get a lot of broadside to get the guns on target, but it has great armor. The bow plating is, I don't want to say irrelevant, but almost irrelevant. The idea is you want to angle at people. You don't just want to stop still, pointing your bow at the enemy and hoping that they will not aim at your bow. You need to present them with your side armor. And if you can do that, this ship, I think, is one of the tankiest cruisers in the game. And I'll offer this match as evidence. We're going to get a lot of luck, I suppose, though, in this match. It's not all going to come down to the armor. A healthy dose of this is going to be luck. And I think, on my part, good decision making. So you can see we've deployed here between the Bravo and the Alpha caps, and my initial plan was to try to play around this island here. I was even thinking of going more into the Alpha flank, but we've got this Schlieffen that's pushing straight through the center of the map, right in the Bravo cap now. And, well, it's just not a great idea to take your battleship and push it into the center of the map within the first couple minutes of the game. I think even the loading screens will provide that advice from time to time, and unlike most of the advice contained in the loading screens, that's some good advice. Just ask the Schlieffen. He goes down, we get the first blood medal. You see, we shot AP at him. These guns on the Michelangelo's center are large guns, and you have to respect them. They're not super accurate, especially if you have Paolo di Revel at the helm, like I do. We have nothing building into the cruiser accuracy. This is a battleship commander that we're running, and we're running him so that we can get the maximum range on the secondaries. But still, our AP is good enough to take out that Schlieffen. And now, maybe we can push in a little bit more. We didn't want to just sit there while the Schlieffen was pushing in. Now that he's gone, perhaps we can make another go at it. Of course, USS Ohio here seems to have the same idea, and we're going to have to wait for him to pass. This sequence here is going to have a sequel later on in the match. This is not the first time USS Ohio and I are going to get in each other's way. I think we have a similar idea about where we want to position our ships. And because the Michelangelo is so tanky, and also because it's much stealthier than a battleship, you can sort of play it like one. I mean, not really. It's tanky enough to bounce battleship shells, certainly, and the guns are large. Then it deals a lot of damage with its secondaries, but I almost think of it as a tiny little battleship. It's definitely a super cruiser in the same league as things like Stalingrad or Petro. Obviously not in terms of the main battery guns, but just in terms of the overall tankiness of the ship. In any case, we're pushing back in a little bit toward the Bravo cap, but obviously torpedoes are coming out of that cap, courtesy of an enemy destroyer. And so if we push straight into it, we're going to be surrounded by a battleship and a Michelangelo out there pushing toward the Charlie cap, and then this Delaware and another battleship out here. So we can't go into Bravo. That'll catch us in a crossfire. So instead, I'm developing a plan because I see a little bit of a potential opening here. If we go around this island and enter the Alpha Cap, we've still got one charge of our smoke screen left. We can turn hard to port, angle our side against the Delaware and whatever other battleship that is out there, and maybe we can secure this cap. Our friendly destroyer on the other side of the map has secured Charlie, but we've lost 2 battleships and a destroyer to the enemy's 1 battleship. Not good. We're going to have to try and turn things around if possible. Now, of course, as soon as we round the corner, here's the Delaware, played by a very good player. I think we've featured some of his gameplay on the channel before. And, well, he's coming right at us, so we're going to have to turn around before our smoke screen dissipates. I want to get the torpedoes in the water. That player in the Delaware, you may know him. He is definitely good enough to know that the reason there's a smoke screen in front of him is because it contains a Michelangelo, and he'll also be expecting torpedoes to come. So, of course, the first set of torpedoes misses as the other battleship rounds the corner, but we've achieved our goal. We wanted to get into a kiting position so that we would be facing away from the threat and able to escape if necessary. And now we'll get the torpedoes on the other side of the ship out at the Delaware. Meanwhile, the secondaries roar to life and begin to shred his HP. These secondaries are just outrageous in terms of their damage output. Torpedoes are pretty good too. Delaware's down to almost no HP. And for our second kill of the game, we get the medal that denotes the ultimate skill. The Close Quarters Expert, also known as the Skill Kill Medal. Of course, on his way out, the Delaware hits us with all of his torpedoes from the sky and takes away the rest of our remaining HP. So you would think, because we ran ourselves into an island there, that we're probably dead. But luckily, it's the Borgonia that's the other battleship, and he's only got 15-inch guns, which our armor is more than capable of mitigating. So, we shoot him with the main battery guns, we tighten up the angle again. That, by the way, is how you mitigate the downside of having poor firing angles on the main battery. You simply use the rudder to open and close the angle in between the salvos from your opponent. Borgonia is getting very close. We aim up into the center of his ship, hoping to take him out with the sap there. Not quite enough, and unfortunately at that kind of range, the secondaries tend to aim at the waterline. They'll shatter there. They won't penetrate the armor of the Borgonia. They will everywhere else, on the bow, upper belt, superstructure, etc. Not the turrets, but our teammates are able to take down the Borgonia, and that leaves us alone in this capture circle. There are still 2 battleships left alive, and I think one of them is still approaching this position. We're going to try to blind fire whatever destroyer is inside of that smoke screen. We, of course, miss. I think he's reversing more toward the left of the screen, and in retrospect, I might have been able to hit him if I had aimed just a little bit better. But there's Montana, a bit more of a scary opponent in terms of the main battery than the Borgonia. Not that the Borgonia's guns are bad or anything. They're just easy to angle against. Montana, on the other hand, can overmatch our bow and stern plating. And to be fair, one of the downsides of this ship is on the rear, where the final secondary turret sits. Well, there's sort of a step there. It's a bit of a shell-catching surface. And if you've got the stern of the ship pointed straight at the enemy, they can shoot at you, and their shells are probably going to pen that flat surface, that little step on the back. So we really do want to show our side to the Montana because we know that the side armor can bounce his shells. Meanwhile, we've got both the Z-44 and the Hayate shooting at us, but you'll notice when their HE hits, it shatters and deals 0 damage. That's because the armor plating in the middle of this ship is quite thick, and the deck armor in the center is 40 millimeters. That's going to shatter all destroyer HE. That's going to shatter a lot of cruiser HE too, for that matter. And the superstructure is next to non-existent. We've got like that little front tower, the funnel, maybe that little rear tower. The rest of that stuff in the center is the turrets, which are heavily armored. So there's not even any superstructure for those destroyers to farm, which is why we managed to survive and get to our last heal. That just leaves the 2 destroyers left alive and 1 final battleship. We've done 150,000 damage, we've sunk 2 enemies, landed a couple torpedoes, and landed 303 secondary hits. I wish at the end of the game it would show us a breakdown of the damage done by the secondaries, because I suspect most of the damage in this match came from our secondaries. There's the Hayate over there, driven by another recognizable name that we might all know, Tactic Angel, fellow CC. Very good player, too, even though he, I think, would never admit that. By the way, here's the sequel to the original sequence where we ran into the USS Ohio, and this time you can see we're in full reverse, but we're still going forward at 7 knots while our bow seems to be fused to his stern. I don't know if this is like a bug. This was happening a lot back in the day, a few months ago, I think, and it's still happening. The Ohio is kind of dragging us. We wanted to go right around this little rock, but I guess we're going to go left in order to extricate ourselves from this situation. We finally achieved separation from the USS Ohio, and now hopefully we can sail toward the last remaining enemy battleship and Tactic Angel, who is in a retreat toward that battleship. Obviously, this game is going to be a win. I mean, technically, that last battleship and Tactic Angel could turn this around. There's Tactics torpedoes coming at me in the Ohio. We're going to be able to sneak through the gap there, but it looked like Ohio might take one, and not quite. It manages to scrape the paint on his ship, and if it had hit, it would have sunk him. But he dodges, we dodge, and we get to continue forward toward the battleship, who is under fire from everybody on our team that's in range of him. We're not quite there. We're about to be. The main battery range on these guns is not great, especially if you don't build into it with any kind of cruiser commander. But why would you do that when the secondaries are in the position of the main battery? I say instead, use Palo di Revel, build for the full secondary build, because I think the majority of damage you do in the ship is going to come from the secondaries. This is a brawling cruiser that you want to take into close range. However, as demonstrated by the sequence you saw inside of that alpha cap, there was a bit of luck involved, to be sure, but there's also a tactic there that I think it's important to keep in mind. Especially in a cruiser, one with torpedoes, one with a heavy armor scheme, one like this. You don't necessarily always want to push bow into the enemy in every engagement, especially not when you're outnumbered. A lot of times you want to be sailing away from them, even with that shell-catching surface on the back of the ship present. Even still, you want to be sailing away, because if they're pushing into you, you're pushing away from them, you're always going to have a bit of an advantage, especially when you can get torpedoes involved. When they're pushing into you and you launch torpedoes in their path, it is a lot easier to hit them. Your secondaries can pummel them on the way out. You can continue to turn and get the main battery on target, then turn again to tighten up the angle, etc. That's one tactic to keep in mind while playing the Michelangelo, and sometimes, if you can do that, you can sort of create situations where you get lucky, like this entire game. I think we did get lucky in this game. I also think we made the right choice to push into the cap when we did, and I think we angled and defended ourselves as best we could, even though we hit an island, like a little bit of a potato. Anyway, we finished the game with almost 160,000 damage done. Not top place on the leaderboard because secondaries, of course, do not allow you to get any XP since there's no interaction with the secondaries, as opposed to, of course, AA, where everybody knows engaging with the AA mechanics require a ton of player input and interaction, which is why they give you so much XP. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. If so, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.